Hello, good day. My name is Sang David. I I'm a cybersecurity graduate. I just graduated recently, and today I'll be working us through the basics of Nmap, right? This is going to be a series. It's going to be a series, so we'll be starting from scratch, from the very, very basics. And I deemed it very mandatory because your understanding of the history of this utility, its features, its functionalities, you know, basic things about this tool helps you when you begin to go advanced in trying to understand it. So please take your time, conduct research, go through the slides, watch the video, and understand everything before you dive into the practical aspect, which is where you begin to execute commands, manipulate commands, and you begin to do a lot of fun stuff. So this is the boring basics, right? But these basics are very important. So this is me introducing you to Nmap basics. So what is Nmap? Probably you've been hearing this too, Nmap, Nmap, Nmap. I mean, it doesn't exactly give you a definition from the name, right? So what exactly is Nmap? Yeah, so what is Nmap? So Nmap is a powerful open source network scanning utility for network discovery, host discovery, and security auditing. So you use Nmap to discover your network, discover what is in your network, what are the connected devices, the host discovery, what are the host, the active host on your system, what are unknown hosts within your network, rather, right? And then you use Nmap for security auditing. So, who created Nmap? Gordon Leon. So, his pseudonym is Fyodor Vaskovich, and he created it in the year 1997. He created it to help us all map our entire networks easily. So by mapping entire network, I mean you'll be able to get the topology, the possible topology a target network is using, the active devices there, and all of that. So you also get to find out open ports, closed ports, filtered, unfiltered, services, versions of services, and a whole lot more, actually. So Nmap has become an indispensable tool for network administrators, security professionals, and researchers worldwide. By that, I mean a lot of career roles, a lot of roles in cybersecurity actually leverage Nmap for their day-to-day activities. So you're a network administrator, your go-to is Nmap. You're an ethical hacker, your go-to is Nmap for information gathering, reconnaissance. You're a security professional, you're someone who conducts research, right? You use Nmap as well. So it enables users to scan networks, identify active hosts. You scan a network. You could scan your home network, you could scan a vulnerable network, but please scan with permission, right? If you're not the owner of a network, make sure you scan this network with permission. So you're scanning this network, you get to know what are the devices that are currently using this network with me. What are the devices that, what ports are open on a particular device? Which operating system is a particular device running on, right? Things like that. That's what Nmap helps you to get. So you use Nmap to gather detailed information about target systems. By target systems, it could be your IP address. It could be an IP address. Your target could be an IP address. Your target could be a website. Your target could be a range of IP addresses, a subnet, a default gateway, and etc. Right. So in the course of this series, where we begin to do to gain practical experience, you get to now understand what I am talking about in depthly. So it is scriptable as well. By that I mean you can script. Nmap is scriptable, so that means you can embed Nmap in a script, and you can use Nmap to execute scripts. Yes, so Nmap has something called the Nmap scripting engine, right? Called NSE, Nmap scripting engine, and this engine executes script for you, right? So you can also integrate Nmap in a DevSecOps pipeline, your CI/CD pipeline, in a way that whenever you're performing integration, you've configured Nmap to be able to scan and also give you information specific to actually what you want to get, right? So Nmap community has even created a scripting engine with hundreds of focus scripts available for free download. So this scripting engine, these scripts rather, are scripted with the Lua programming language. So with that, I mean the Nmap scripting engine cannot execute a Python script. No, it executes a Lua script, right? So if you actually want to write your own script, you have to learn Lua scripting language. But if you don't want to learn, there are hundreds of scripts for different tasks, different things on the internet where you can freely download, and then you integrate it to Nmap, so the Nmap scripting engine could execute it for you. We'll also look at that subsequently. So, and speaking of free, Nmap is open source, so that means you can trust its reliability, version history, and free of cost status. By open source, that means you don't need to have a license to use Nmap, you don't need to buy Nmap, you don't need to subscribe to use Nmap. It is free, you could download it, you can use it, but the only thing is, please use it ethically. Right? Use it ethically. So what is the history of Nmap? In the early origins, that is from the very beginning, Nmap's roots lie in the 1990s. So Nmap started as a university project, right, which was focused on network discovery. Then eventually, Gordon Leon released it in 1997 as an open source project. So it was limited to just a university project, but then it became open source in a way that the community can actually analyze and be able to modify and be able to contribute to the build of Nmap. So eventually, the movie industry began to integrate this tool in their movies, and that is, it's not like they are using Nmap to write their movies, no, but then they are integrating it in scenes that talk about hacking, right? So most movies where you see, the terminal constantly moving in real time, it's not actually them hacking. Sometimes, right, in certain cases, certain occasions, it is Nmap they are executing. Excuse me. It's Nmap they are executing. So they execute Nmap in real time, and then from there you see you're thinking someone is actually hacking something. No. So certain movies that Nmap was integrated include Die Hard 4.0, The Matrix Reloaded, right, when Trinity was trying to hack into an SSH server that was vulnerable, right? She used Nmap to scan the network, be able to pinpoint the version of the SSH used, and then she exploited it to gain access. And then another movie is Ocean's 8. You can check these movies out, right, at your own time. And another thing with Nmap is it is community driven. That is, Nmap's development benefited greatly from contributions from global community developers. So it's not a one-person project, right? A lot of developers, even you yourself, you want to contribute, you have something you want to add, modify, or improve. You could speak to the community, and then you integrate your contribution, right? So all of this put together resulted to the Nmap we're using today. So Nmap has evolved into a sophisticated and versatile tool used by security professionals worldwide, right? So it's not limited. You can be in cybersecurity, use Nmap. You can be a SOC analyst, use Nmap. It's not limited to any specific career path per se. Right, so what are the features of Nmap? right? You as a person, you have characteristics, right? Features could be like characteristics. So what are these things that stand out with this tool that make this tool look like, okay, this is it, right? Firstly, we have port scanning. You can use Nmap to scan your ports, right? By ports, I mean ports are access points or entry points into a network, a device, or a system, right? You can use Nmap to scan for ports. And by scanning for ports, you scan for ports to know which port is open, which port is closed, which port is filtered, what is running, what is the service that is running in this port. That is what port scanning is. And this is very, very important, right? Another thing with Nmap is used for host discovery. By host, I mean devices. What are the devices currently on this network? What are the ports that are open in this device, right? Which operating system is running on this device, right? Host discovery. You discover hosts on your network. Another thing is operating system detection, OS detection. Nmap helps you to narrow down the possible operating system a host is using, a target is running on, a server is using, a router is using. Nmap can help you figure that out. And it gives you this feedback in percentages. So for example, you have a system, a laptop, using a network, and you want to narrow down the operating system running on that laptop, right? Let's say the laptop is running a Linux operating system. So from there, Nmap gives you suggestions. Probably the system is running Linux version this at 98%, Linux version this 90%, Linux version this 80%. So it decreases till the least possible operating system this system is running on. So you see how fun this is, right? I mean, when I was practicing my Nmap, that was around, let's say 2 years ago, and I was using my school Wi-Fi to do that, right? I was using my school Wi-Fi to do that, and my friends were there. I was able to see their systems. I was able to see the operating system they're using, the ports that were open, and I was just, talking to them, and I was like, oh, this is what you're using. This is possibly what you're using. This is the ports that is running on your system, and all of that, and it was really, really fun. So you can try that out with your home network. Right, so you can also use Nmap for service detection. That is another characteristic, another feature in Nmap, service detection. By service detection, I mean like the applications, right? Let's say the applications, certain ports are using, right? So let's say ports 22 ports, a port that is running FTP, SSH, right? These ports, this characteristic is telling you that Nmap helps you to narrow down, to tell you what service is running on what ports. So through your understanding of this, you get to narrow down, okay, I know that this system is having this port open. This port is running this service. So it now prompts you to the next feature. Okay, which version is this service, right? What is the version of the SSH we're using? What is the version of the Apache we're running? What is the version of HTTP, anything it is, right, that you're running? So that now moves us to the version detection feature. So Nmap also helps you to narrow down the version. So you see, it's literally giving you everything you need, and all you need to do is just work on this information. So you get that port 22 is open, you get that port 22 is running this service, you get that this service is at version this. So what do? You go to your browser, you browse, okay, the SSH, what is the current version of SSH? Let's say 6.7, for example, right? And the version Nmap was giving you is that your target system is running SSH version 5.0. So you see, that is an outdated version. So through that knowledge, you begin to look for scripts that exploit SSH version 5.0, and then you begin to, send it to your target host so you can exploit it. That is a scenario where you can actively work on this information. So Nmap gathers information for you to work on. Another thing is ping scanning. Pinging in networking is literally scanning a network or trying to see if a device is active on the network, right? So ping scanning helps you to find out, okay, is this host active? Is this host not inactive? Something like that. So it helps you to be able to narrow down the active host on your network and the hosts that are not active. So you see, through your knowledge of having the active host, you know what host to target and what host not to target, because Nmap is used to scan very, very large networks. It's not for scanning very small segmented networks. No, it was actually built to scan very large networks. So through this, through the ping scanning, you can be able to extract only the active hosts on your network. In a network having up to 1,000 hosts and you have only 5 hosts that are active, how do you want to narrow that down, right? So that is where ping scanning comes into the picture. It helps you to bring out only those 5 hosts that are active on your network so that you can begin to scan them individually. Another feature, Nmap scripting engine. Like I mentioned earlier, it is an engine that it's used to execute scripts. And if you're looking for scripts, there are a lot of scripts on the internet you can download. But it is very important that you know the nature of these scripts and you know how to execute them, right? Another feature is firewall evasion and spoofing. I remember when I was learning this as well, there was this friend of mine that was emphasizing on don't scan any kind of network on the internet. Don't scan any kind of network on the internet. Until eventually we had a class whereby someone was telling us that, yes, you can actually scan a target and then you're able to evade detection. So I was very curious, like, okay, how do we do that? And then I found out that I could actually do that with Nmap, right? So let's say your target is having firewalls, right? You can use Nmap to bypass the configuration that firewall is supposed to execute to block you, right? You could spoof and then you would be able to evade these firewalls. That is really a fun thing to me. Another interesting thing, another feature is vulnerability assessment, right? So you can use Nmap to scan for vulnerabilities. Now, mind you, Nmap is not a tool that scans for vulnerabilities and gives you recommendations. No, it is not a vulnerability management tool. No, it is a vulnerability assessment or a vulnerability scanning tool. So it only scans and gives you the feedback. Have in mind that it is only an information gathering tool. It only gathers information. It doesn't exploit on this information. It only gathers information for your own consumption for you to work on, right? So you can use Nmap to scan for vulnerabilities. The interesting thing is you can actually use Nmap to crack a password. So you can do that through scripting. Right, you write a script or you get a script that does that and then you execute the script with your Nmap scripting engine. And last but not the least, TCP, stealth, UDP scans. So you use Nmap to perform different scans. There are a lot of scans you can use Nmap to execute, to perform, and eventually we will be having much of those practicals. So what are the functions? If you understand clearly the features of Nmap, the functionalities shouldn't be difficult for you to pinpoint or to grasp. So we have network discovery, security auditing, vulnerability scanning, service detection, network mapping, performance monitoring, right? You can monitor the performance of hosts on your network, right? You track network activity and then you identify bottlenecks. So you'll be able to track the behavior of your network with Nmap. And then research and development. You use Nmap to give you information for your research and your development. Let's say you're a security researcher, a network researcher, and all of that. You can use Nmap to conduct experiments where you take screenshots, right? You make your analysis, and then there you go. Now, with this understanding of what Nmap is, right? What roles in cybersecurity actually use this tool per se, right? So there are a lot of roles in cybersecurity. So we're not limiting these roles. We're not limiting roles that use Nmap to just these 6 here, but I narrowed it down to this because one way or the other you have to fall in any of this category, right? So we have first security analyst, SOC analyst, security analyst, cybersecurity analyst, whichever you want to call them, right? They use Nmap to scan for vulnerabilities and monitor network activity. Right, so you can be a security analyst handling a lot of or bigger tasks, but you can actually come down to use Nmap to be able to scan for vulnerabilities and be able to monitor your network activity. Right, so we have network administrators. They use Nmap to map their network infrastructure. So I mentioned something about you using Nmap to get your a map of your network, like a topology. Are you using what topology are you using, right? The star. You can actually use Nmap to be able to figure that out. So network administrators use that, right, to troubleshoot and also be able to identify devices connected to networks. So in an organization, network administrators are able to pinpoint known devices, that is authorized devices, and unknown devices, that is unauthorized devices. So we have penetration testers. I know, right? Everyone wants to become a pen tester. I mean, you talk to somebody in cybersecurity today, what do you want to do? Ethical hacking. What do you want to do? Pen testing. So, it's something like it's a place, it's a go-to to most persons I have come across. And if you actually want to explore the offensive cybersecurity, Nmap is a tool you should know how to use, right? So pen testers use Nmap to scan for networks. So in pen testing, there are different stages, right? You have the information gathering stage, the scanning stage, the exploitation, maintaining access, post-exploitation stage, right? Reporting as well, right? So in pen testing, you use Nmap in the first 2 stages. That is the information gathering and the scanning stage. So you use Nmap to gather information about your network. What are the active hosts? What are the open ports? What are the what is the operating system, right, on my target? And then you use it in the second stage, which is the scanning phase, right? So you begin to scan this port. What is the service running on this port? Which vulnerability is in this system, right? Like that. You begin to evade firewalls and a lot of fun stuff, right? You conduct different kinds of scans, stealth scans, TCP scans, XMAS scans, null scans, and a lot more to discover. So another role that leverage Nmap is researchers. So these cybersecurity researchers, they study network behavior and then they develop new security tools and techniques. So you're someone that is working on a project where you want to build a tool that integrates some features in Nmap, right? You could use Nmap to gain that understanding. I mean, what better way to get that information, right? So you want to create a project, you want to work on the project, you want to build a new tool, you want to prefer a solution, you want to give better enlightenment, you want to give enlightenment on a certain concept, right, that relates to network scanning, network discovery, host discovery, and anything relating to Nmap. You can use Nmap for that. So another role is system administrators. So these persons use Nmap to scan systems for active devices. They're almost the same thing with network administrators, right? You could use them interchangeably right? But then not really recommendable because there are distinct roles they perform that still makes them different, right? But they do almost the same thing, right? And then the next thing is DevSecOps engineers. I mean, this is my field, DevSecOps. I am actively currently working into becoming a DevSecOps professional, right? So if you're someone that's aspiring to do DevOps, DevSecOps, you work with the CI/CD pipeline, right, and all of that, you can actually integrate Nmap as well in your CI/CD pipeline. Just like you integrate other tools, you can also integrate Nmap. And that when I found this out, I was like really thrilled, right? So these are things you should explore, you should try out, and then you have fun with them. So these are some roles, right, that leverage Nmap. So how do you install Nmap, right? How do you install Nmap? Sometimes I've conducted trainings and I have students who are like, I already have an operating system. Shouldn't it come inbuilt, right? Shouldn't Nmap come inbuilt in these operating systems? No. An operating system like Windows would not actually come with Nmap inbuilt because Nmap is more of a command line tool, right? And Windows is more of a graphical user interface operating system. So you see, they are like opposites, right? So, and because of that, you can actually use Nmap on Windows after you've installed WSL, right? You use it on WSL, right? Or on a virtual machine, you have a Linux operating system installed, right? So you install your Nmap there and you use it on Windows, right? But then there's another provision for Windows users who are not conversant with the command line, right? Or you're actually conversant with the command line, but you want to explore something new, then there is a GUI for Nmap, and that GUI is called Nmap. Nmap, right? So if you don't want to deal with the whole learning new commands, Nmap-V, Nmap-SV, Nmap-SL, SN, like that, and you just want to have a colored interface with buttons, right, where you just have to click this and input this, click this, input this, and that's it, then your go-to is Nmap. But if you want to have fun, right, this is my own perspective, right, if you want to have fun, you want to play around with commands, you want to manipulate a lot of commands, then the CLI is your go-to. So if you want to install Nmap on Windows, you have to go to you have to go to your browser, download Nmap installer, and install it, right? Or you can actually install Nmap, right, on the GUI rather. So if you want to install Nmap on Linux, right, you use the package manager. So there are package managers on Linux operating systems. That's like apt, yum, dnf, etc. So depending on the one you have on your, or the one you prefer to use, you install this. You install Nmap using these package managers. So you go to your terminal and then you execute Nmap. Let's see if we can try that out. Right, so I'm already in my terminal, right? So I think I already have Nmap installed. You run Nmap and then you already have it installed. So if you just execute Nmap, Nmap just gives you a rundown of everything it's all about. So it has a lot of sections, right? Different sections, but then you can actually also know what Nmap is all about, right? So we see what is Nmap, and here they tell us that Nmap is a network exploration tool or a security auditing tool as well, right? So that's not actually what we're here, but if you want to install Nmap on your Linux operating system, right, you can do apt install Nmap, right? So okay, you have to run it as a super user do. So you do sudo so you see I already have Nmap installed. So Nmap is already the newest version, right? So I already have Nmap installed. So if you already have it installed, this is what you get. But if you don't have Nmap installed, it installs for you. So you see the package manager apt apt install, and then you have Nmap here. So this is the command line, the CLI here. So you want to play around, you have to start learning all of these commands here, all the options and all the arguments. So that's how you install Nmap on the GUI, on Linux rather, right? So, but if you want to install it on Mac, there's a process for that as well. So you install it using Homebrew, that's a package manager for Mac operating systems, or you download the installer from the Nmap website. Excuse me. So that's it. So if you want to execute, you want to check Nmap, if Nmap is installed on your terminal, right? Be it you're using Linux, you're using Mac, or you're running a virtual machine of Linux operating system on Windows, or you're using WSL on Windows. You just type Nmap on your terminal to find out if it is actually installed or not. So if you type Nmap and it gives you a feedback relating to Nmap, then it's installed. But if you don't have Nmap installed, it signifies and says you don't have Nmap installed. So that's just how you install Nmap on these operating systems. Then when we start practical sessions, we have to practicalize installing this for the different operating systems depending on who is using what OS. So now I've been talking of targets, host, targets on Nmap. What does that mean, right? So targets in Nmap, I mean, these are, it's just like you want to perform a scan, but then what do you want to perform a scan on? What are the possible things you can perform a scan on using Nmap? What are the possible things you can perform a network discovery on using Nmap, right? What are those things that Nmap sends those crafted packets to for you to get your feedback? So the first thing here is IP addresses, right? Since we're dealing with networks, right? IP addresses are the first targets you can actually use in Nmap, right? So your IP address can be IP version 4, IP version 6. It's not limited to any, right? You can use either of them, right? Another thing is host names and domain names, right? Host names, domain names, like let's say sang.com, nmap with sang.com, right? A name of a website, a URL. That can also be a target you can use in Nmap, right? Another thing is network ranges. That is, you have a specific range of hosts, let's say a specific range of IP addresses on a network that you want Nmap to scan for you, right? You can also specify it in a range form. Another thing is MAC addresses. So you can scan your targets by specifying the MAC address of your targets, right? So if you don't want to specify it using the IP address, but you want to specify that target with MAC address, for example, you're scanning a network, or let me refer back to my example, when I was scanning the Wi-Fi and I was seeing the systems or the host of my friends, right? If I scan the operating system, it gives me the feedback with the MAC address of their systems, right? So if I want to delve more and get more information relating to their systems, I can decide to use the IP address of their systems, or I use the MAC address provided. See, right? So another thing is subnet masks, and then you can also use the CIDR notation, right? The /24, you need to understand networking. Yes, so that's another thing I wanted to talk about, right? If you need to use Nmap well, you need to have an idea of what networking is. So you need to have an idea of what IP addresses are, what MAC addresses are, what subnets are, right? The CIDR notation, and a lot more, right? So make sure you take your time to understand these things before you begin to interpret reports provided by Nmap, right? So we've had a lot of information, right? And you're trying to understand, you're trying to process, how does this even happen, right? I just give Nmap a target, and I just tell it to scan ports for me. I just say, okay, what service is running on your ports, and Nmap just does that. How does it have access to my systems, right? So how does that happen? So the world is connected, right? We have networks here and there. Computers are connected to share information, right? So Nmap is a tool, is a utility that connects to your system by sending specially crafted packets to a target, right? So remember, your target could be an IP address, the IP address of a server, the IP address of a device, the IP address of a router, the IP address of a laptop, a computer, whatever, right? So it could be an IP address of one of those, so long as it's connected to the internet, right? So Nmap sends specially crafted packets. So by specially crafted packets, I'm relating it to the command you execute or the kind of activity you want Nmap to execute for you. So for example, you want to scan the ports on a target on your network of an IP address, right? So Nmap crafts these packets in a way that, hey, are you available for communication? I'm trying to scan your ports, right? So it crafts these packets and then it sends it to your target. So your target receives these packets from Nmap. And why does it receive it? It receives it because, number one, maybe there's no firewall. Number two, if there's a firewall, it would block your packets from getting into the system. Number three, the network receives it and it actually gives a response, right? So whichever thing that happens on the other end, right, that is on the target's end, Nmap gives you back as feedback. So Nmap says, hey, I want to scan your ports, right? So the target system, if there's a firewall, it would bounce back the packet, right? So what does Nmap tell you? Nmap then tells you there's probably a firewall on the other end and we're not able to probe to get the ports. That's what Nmap tells you, actually. If there's no firewall, right, that means the packet gets into the system and then it gains access to the system and then it finds out what ports are actually running on the system. So Nmap fetches that information and drops it to your terminal as well, right? So it tells you, okay, I was actually able to gain access and then this is what I got. Understood, right? So if there is anything that Nmap is not really sure of, right, in the course of this process, it tells you as well. So we're not sure if this port is open, we're not sure if this service is actually the service, we're not sure if this is the operating system, but we think to a certain percentage this is actually the operating system running. So you see, it's giving you this information in real time, right? So it analyzes the responses, gleaning insights into the presence of hosts, open ports, and services. So Nmap can identify host operating systems, the versions of running services, and potential vulnerabilities present on target systems. So this is a lot, and I find it's very, very interesting. So with all of this, we'll be moving into the practicals, right, in subsequent lessons. And you wouldn't want to, or even on your own, right, after you've learned this tool, you wouldn't want to just be executing or be performing your scans in just any kind of environment. So why should you use or why should you practice Nmap in a controlled environment? So running Nmap scans in a controlled environment ensures you are not disrupting or affecting live production systems or sensitive data. Now, you're hired as a pen tester, right? You're hired as a pen tester, and then you're performing a scan on a network. And then the organization tells you you can only scan this segment of our networks and not scan this segment. Why? Because this segment is related to our business operations. So if you're to scan it, it might disrupt our business operations. So you see, they've given you a controlled environment. They've given you a place where you can do whatever you want to do. But if you go outside your bounds and you actually scan the network you're not supposed to scan, you see, you disrupted business operations. Probably they begin to they begin to lag, right? And then things begin to crash. So it's crucial you obtain permission and you understand the potential impact of your scans, particularly in environments where network security is critical before you begin to do anything with Nmap. You're probably feeling it's not an aggressive tool. It is. Nmap can become very aggressive and you can shut down systems if used in a scenario or in an environment where it's very sensitive to any glitch in the network, right? So controlled environments allow for experimentation, testing, and training without risking disruption to live systems. So if you're in an environment where you've been given permission to not go beyond your limits, please abstain from trying to go beyond your limit. Remember, you're doing this because you're supposed to have an ethical mindset. So have an environment where you execute these commands, where you train, where you practice, where you experiment, you test, so without affecting other persons' networking systems. So for this series, we'll be using OWASP BOA. If there are any changes, you'll be notified, right? So we'll run through the installation, and then when we're conducting our scans, we'll be using something like that. So I explained how Nmap fits into pen testing, where I said Nmap it fits into the information gathering and the gathering and the scanning phase, rather, right? So it is used to discover open ports, active hosts on your network, and identify potential vulnerabilities. So you're a pen tester, you can use Nmap for the first two phases of your pen testing process, right? It might not be enough, right? So you have to use it together with other tools, but then it fits perfectly in those two phases. You can't use Nmap in the exploitation phase. No, you can't use Nmap in the exploitation phase. You can't use Nmap in the maintaining access phase because it is not an offensive tool. Rather, it is a tool that gathers information for you. It can become aggressive, right? But then it doesn't exploit. So as a pen tester, it is highly recommended that you use or you learn how to use this tool effectively.